right? What we feel God to be, even in an authentic mystical encounter, is not what God is. Strictly speaking, if I have a mystical experience with God, this is, philosophical speak, okay? Strictly speaking, I'm not actually feeling God's presence. I'm feeling the effect God's presence is having on me. And so, so the words we have about God, and sometimes the spiritual experience that we have of God while reflecting on those words, is not God itself. It isn't God itself. We don't really know that to be God. We can say we're in relationship with God. Clearly we can say that. We can say that we've tasted God. In extreme heights of mystical experience, we could say we've had quite direct tastes of God. We can say that. But apophaticism reveals to us that whatever we've felt, understood, or experienced through mystical experience of varying degrees falls short of what God actually is. And this isn't about keeping people down, right? This isn't about keeping someone down. But it is about taming a number of things that arise in a Christian soul as it approaches God. One of them could be intellectual pride. We're reading about this great thing, right? God became human, revealed itself to us. This is big stuff, right? God has a plan for the human race to save it from its suffering, right? We're beginning to read about that. Well, there's always that temptation, right, for a fallen soul, that's everybody, to take those concepts in and form pride about them in the brain, to be puffed up by knowledge. There's always that temptation. In fact, it's quite common, and you see it all the time in people, right? It's something we all have to be careful about. So apophaticism encourages us to have a much more profound intellectual humility. Say, okay, I understand what I understand. If you're really smart, you understand a lot. If you have average intelligence, you understand plenty. If you're of low intelligence, you understand enough for salvation, for sure. All those are the same in relationship to the infinity of God. Like, all those three positions are equal, really, in comparison to the infinity of God. And all of those positions must humbly bow down and understand we know nothing. So even if the understanding is great, right, as great as it can be in this world through the mind, it's not enough. It does not rise to God. And it must be easily set aside, right, as a basic operating system in life. To just easily set it aside and not walk around in those concepts and in those ideas. Why? Why would you want to do that? Well, because Christian spirituality has never been about gnosis, knowledge. It's never been about knowledge. It's about relationship with Christ, actually connecting with Christ. And we know from the great saints that there are levels of relationship with Christ, levels of awakening. They're open to all people. All people can climb to the same level of love. All people can arise to the same level of purification and healing from sin and suffering. All people can become quite intimate with God. I mean, everyone's invited, right? Just not many people are ready or want to come. We're all too busy, right? The parable of the land. I just went and bought land. I can't come. Oh, I've had a big party. I can't come. Right? That's the situation God finds itself in, right? Everyone's invited, but few show up. But everyone can arise to the same place. There's no secrets. Knowledge has never been the way in for Christianity. It's not the way in. Our way in is love, sincerity, will, the genuine desire to know God That's how you get in. You want to know God. You get in by wanting to know God. That's how. And prayer and contemplative experience in Christianity is just a deepening of that want and a deeper penetration into the levels of connection that come through that want. And so knowledge can't get us there. It's great to know the things we know. It's very helpful. It sets the tone and the flavor of Christian spirituality. It can very often correct Christian spirituality because there are ways to get off track, right? There are ways. There are levels in bliss that can take one outside of orthodoxy, and thank goodness for revelation to say, hey, this is it. This isn't it. This is it. It's not this, it's this. That's great stuff. We want that. That's what it's for. But it's almost like just a container that sort of holds the way while what it really is happens. For Christian mysticism, for contemplative Christianity, what it really is had an experience, right? It's in mystical encounter, ecstasy, the saints say, right? We come in by way of ecstasy. Apophaticism quiets the mind, not for half an hour twice a day in prayer, but always. It dampens everything. It quiets it. The brain still works, but it quiets down. And then this other part of the mind that is open to something more subtle and more infinite, you can now hear it, because the brain is not just sitting around making noise all day. Especially the will and the brain combined are now not trying to find the way by figuring it out, right? That's also a false path. It doesn't lead to the truth. It leads to truths, but it doesn't lead to what we would call seventh stage prayer, the prayer of union in Christian mysticism. It won't lead to that. So then we're left with recourse to mysticism. We're left with recourse to our experience with God. But even there, apophaticism has a profound role, because even our mystical experience that we would say is authentic is a snippet of the reality. It's like, you've been touched by God. I meet people who've been really touched by God, and obviously in profound ways. And they have been. Clearly they have been. But they would be in profound error if they took that direct experience with God that they had and made of it the whole picture. If they hold it too dearly, it becomes a true thing, like God is love, God is Trinity. Well, someone can have a direct experience with God in love. Now I know God is love. God is love. Well, you're right, God is love, but God is more than love. So a pride can build up around this mystical experience that we have. We're born again, touched in some way. Now I know. You do know this much, when there's a universe of it to know. And so apophaticism protects the truths that have been revealed to us, the great truths in Revelation and the personal truths in mystical experience, and that often are in alignment with revelations. We know they're authentic. Apophaticism protects these truths from our mind and what we do with these truths. The pride that we build around them, the mental constructs that we build around them, the limitations we put on God when we make God small and understandable by this brain. And that goes for people that are, extremely intelligent. There's just nobody that can compute God. So apophaticism, I think, is expressed best in a profound intellectual and mystical humility. Yes, I've had direct experience with God, and so what? It is a true fundamental stance that says, I don't know. I don't know. And it should never be seen as it's related to humility in general in this way, that apophaticism, intellectual and mystical humility, it should never be seen as a preliminary step that you take before you get to where you really know. It actually, if this is everything a human being can know in this life, like the highest possible state a human being could achieve in this life, and this is where that person began with apophaticism. When they're here, they should have no less apophaticism than when they began. And if a Christian spirituality is authentic, or it might be better to say complete, they should have more apophaticism the further they go, not less. So it is truly an initiation that changes a person fundamentally. They will interact differently if they have found apophaticism. They will have a certain skepticism of their mystical experience, even when it's true, even though really it's difficult to ever know for sure with 100% certainty if a mystical experience is true, right? That'll be a topic for another video, like how do we know if a mystical experience is true or not? And the short answer is we never know for sure, not with 100% certainty. We can know by volume over time. We can know by the fruits over time. But in any one given moment, a Christian should never know that they know God's will. That is a form of arrogance that one should not take and have in their heart. So apophaticism protects us from intellectual pride, mystical pride, the pride of life, the pride of I've been a Christian for 20 years, so I've been walking for, and you have gained something. You don't gain if you don't walk for 20 years, and that's just true. But so what? Right? So what? There's always more. We have an infinite God. And so apophaticism does not take away the concepts that we have been taught about God, especially the concepts that have been revealed to us in Scripture. It just puts us in a right relationship with those concepts and says that we don't know what any of that really means. You can describe a banana to me all day. I can study bananas all day. I know the banana better when I've eaten it than in all the study I did about it. But if I eat a banana, I still don't know a banana fully, right? So this is that's how it is with God. So apophaticism, the way of arriving at God by negation, God is not love, right? God is not the good. God is not pure being. God is not consciousness. We know God is those things. We know that. But we don't know what any of that means, and so we have to say God is not those things. Not this, not that, not this, not that. Until we arrive at some kind of simplicity. And that's really the goal of it. It gets us to a place where we can really and truly rest in God's presence without trying to figure it out, without running it through a filter all the time. Filter of my understanding. We can let it be what we didn't think it was, right? We can let it be not just the light, but the dark, right? As we know about the nights of Christian spirituality, the nights. We can let God be bigger than what we think God is. We can release barriers, mental barriers and constructs that come with will, right, with resistance in the will, or affinity in the will. We can have less preferences as to the buffet of what God is offering us, right? We can be less prone to, that feels like the love I've tasted, so I'll go after that every time I pray, right? This is the love you've tasted, and this is what love is. So this love you've tasted is nothing. It's now a construct. It's now an idea we've built, right? It's now a limitation. It's a positive statement about God, right? Cataphatic statement. So now we need an apophatic statement. God is not that. God is more than that. It seems like God is that, but what would it be like if you tasted that along with everything else it was at the same time? It would no longer seem like that to you. It would now seem different. That's the thing about Christian spirituality. So, like, talking to Eastern people, right? Eastern spirituality, Buddhism and Hinduism, they might say to us, hey, you've got a lot of concepts here. You have some pretty complex theological concepts. How doesn't that get in the way? Well, I think for a lot of people it does. But if you get apophaticism, if you begin to negate those concepts and calm them down and quiet them, and more importantly, if the Holy Spirit begins to initiate you into this, because it really is an initiation, then those concepts become signposts that point in the right direction. They become beacons sometimes out in the sea of mysticism, the sea of spirituality that refine and clarify things for us along the way. But they don't become concepts that hold us back. And because in the end, our concepts can oftentimes be chains. Chains that are keeping us from what it really is. And I won't share about it in this video, but in relationship to contemplative prayer is obviously very important, because contemplative prayer enters a state beyond thought where you're just experiencing God directly with no filter. This is the goal, right? This is the highest form of prayer, right? After thinking about God, you enter into the actual experience of God with much less thought or no thought, oftentimes no thought at all. Directly absorbing it with no filter to pollute it or manipulate it or grasp it or change it. So apophaticism, like humility, is one of our very, very best friends on the Christian path. It never, ever states that the scriptures are not true. It just gives a little space there for the scriptures not to be what we think they are, the exact way we think they are. That creates space and room for God to reveal itself. And that's ultimately what apophaticism is about. Once you grasp it, you don't stop wondering, but you do wonder less. You don't stop trying to figure it all out, but you figure it all out a lot less. The reason for that is because you start to notice it is being revealed to you. And that in a year of apophaticism, you can look back and see some things with a clarity you could not see constructing it in your mind. And in 5 years of apophaticism, you pick up a theology book, right, that you've already read, and it means much more to you than it meant 5 years before. So we're preserving an actual encounter with God by negating our concepts of God and our mystical experiences with God. All of them. We can say it's all true. We can't really say all of our mystical experiences are true, but we can definitely say all of the scriptures' revelatory information is true. We can say that. But we cannot say that we understand it and know really and truly what it means. And when we do, we err. and we cause harm to Christ in the world, especially when we are in arguments and fights with other Christians over these concepts. So that's apophaticism in a nutshell. I think it's too long of a video. If there's questions below, leave them. I'll answer questions. If anyone's rude, I'm going to cancel I'm not going to, in all of my videos, I'm not going to allow like bickering to go on. If there's bickering or infighting, rudeness, even if your point you're making is a good one, if you're rude, we're just going to get rid of it because it's poison. We don't need poison. If a person cannot respectfully and lovingly state their point, they have no place in the comments section, and I'll do my best to delete them out. But everyone is invited to share their insights and ideas about this video, and thanks for watching.